Today, the UN votes overwhelmingly to call for a ceasefire in Gaza. Houthi rebels strike a Norwegian ship in the Red Sea, and a deal is reached at the COP28 Climate Summit. From TLDR News, this is your daily briefing for Wednesday, the 13th of December, 2023. The United Nations General Assembly voted overwhelmingly on Tuesday afternoon for a non-binding resolution calling for an immediate humanitarian ceasefire in Gaza and demanding the immediate and unconditional release of all hostages. While carrying political weight and reflecting global opinion, General Assembly resolutions are non-binding, so the vote does not mean that there will actually be a ceasefire in Gaza. The resolution, which also demanded that all parties comply with international law, notably with regard to the protection of civilians, was adopted overwhelmingly, with 153 countries in favour, 10 against, and 23 abstentions. As expected, the United States and Israel voted against the resolution, and were joined in their opposition by Austria, the Czech Republic, Guatemala, Liberia, Micronesia, Nauru, Papua New Guinea, and Paraguay. Notable countries voting to abstain include Argentina, Germany, Italy, Ukraine, and the United Kingdom. The resolution also expresses grave concern over the catastrophic humanitarian situation in the Gaza Strip, which the UN Secretary-General recently said is close to full-blown collapse. According to the Gaza Health Ministry, more than 18,000 Palestinians have been killed in Gaza since Israel launched its offensive. The General Assembly vote comes after the Security Council has repeatedly failed to pass a resolution demanding a ceasefire in Gaza due to opposition by the United States. Speaking to the General Assembly ahead of the vote, the US ambassador to the UN said that the US agreed with aspects of the resolution, for example, the need to protect civilians and free hostages, but added that any ceasefire right now would be temporary at best and dangerous at worst. There were a number of attempts to amend the non-binding resolution too. The US and Austria, for example, tried to add in lines naming and condemning Hamas, but these proposed amendments failed to reach the two-thirds majority needed to pass. After the resolution was overwhelmingly approved, the Palestinian envoy to the UN called it a historic day in terms of the powerful message that was sent from the General Assembly. Despite this, the US and Israel remain firmly opposed to the ceasefire, so Israel's war in the Gaza Strip looks set to continue. Outside of the UN, though, while still not calling for a ceasefire, the United States has been somewhat critical of Israel's conduct. President Biden said that Israel is starting to lose international support because of its indiscriminate bombing of Gaza. He also called Benjamin Netanyahu's government the most conservative government in Israel's history, adding that said government doesn't want a two-state solution. There's more on the way, but be sure to subscribe and ring the bell to make the daily briefing part of your daily routine, or just search for us on your podcast app to listen along. Houthi militants from Yemen confirmed on Tuesday that one of their missiles had struck a Norwegian commercial tanker in the Red Sea, the latest in a series of attacks against vessels that the Houthis say is retribution for Israel's actions in Gaza. A spokesperson for the Iran-backed group said they attacked the ship, called the Strinder, because it was making a delivery to an Israeli oil terminal, adding that it had rejected all warning calls. However, according to the ship's owner, it was actually heading to Italy, not with crude oil, but with biofuel feedstock. That being said, once the vessel had made it to safe waters, the company acknowledged that it was, quote, tentatively scheduled to make a stop at an Israeli port, adding that they had initially withheld this information on the recommendation of their security advisors. The missile hit the ship and started a fire, which was brought under control, and there have been no reports of injuries. In recent weeks, Houthi rebels in Yemen have carried out several attacks on commercial ships passing through the Red Sea, which is crucial to world trade, with some 17,000 ships and 10% of global trade passing through each year. Meanwhile, at the COP28 Climate Summit this Wednesday morning, nearly 200 countries reached what's been described as a historic agreement, dubbed the UAE Consensus, to transition away from fossil fuels and reach net zero emissions globally by 2050. Talks lasted all night as countries decided how strict the agreement should be in regards to the future role of fossil fuels, a key issue at the summit. Initial reactions to the agreement were mixed, some praising it as a breakthrough for finally having language on fossil fuels, and others expressed concern over its lack of transformational impact. It was seen as positive that the agreement emphasises that countries should take on different levels of responsibility, a debate between the global north and south that's been ongoing for decades, yet some countries just weren't convinced. It was criticised for its lack of detail on how developing countries with weaker economies will finance the shift away from fossil fuels, and the alliance of small island states highlighted a litany of loopholes that are of concern. All in all, it's a sorely needed improvement, but critics argue that it still falls short on calling for a full phase-out of fossil fuels. In news from Thailand, a Thai lawmaker has been jailed for 6 years after being convicted of royal insult charges. 28-year-old Rukchanok Srinawk, known as Ice, was accused of posting or reposting tweets critical of the Thai monarchy, and was sentenced to 3 years on the royal insult charge and 3 years on a Computer Crimes Act charge. The court has approved her temporary release while she appeals the conviction and sentence. Ice is an MP from Move Forward, a progressive party that won the most seats in this year's election, having campaigned on overhauling the political system, including by reforming the strict royal defamation laws known as lèse-majesté, codified in Section 112 of the Thai Criminal Code. Despite winning the most seats, Move Forward failed to form a government due to opposition from the military-aligned unelected Senate. The party is effectively the successor of the Future Forward Party, which was dissolved by authorities in 2020, sparking major youth-led protests. Since 2020, there have been roughly 260 charges filed under the royal insult law, according to the group Thai Lawyers for Human Rights. Opponents of the royal insult law, which has a maximum sentence of up to 15 years imprisonment, say it's used as a way to censor all criticism of the government and that it's being used more and more frequently. In some final uplifting news, the scimitar horned oryx, a type of antelope that had become extinct in the wild, has been brought back from the brink of extinction and been downgraded to endangered, thanks to a breeding initiative involving the Zoological Society of London and the Environment Agency of Abu Dhabi. Once widespread across North Africa, the scimitar horned oryx was declared extinct in the wild in 2000. However, since the launch of the breeding initiative, there have now been 510 scimitar horned oryx calves born in the wild in Chad, and there is now considered to be a self-sustaining wild population. That's all for today, but if you want more from us, then you should pick up a copy of our newspaper, Too Long. And if you've been considering it for a while, then this week only the code TLDRDAILY will get you 30% off, so it's the ideal time to buy. If you don't know, Too Long is our one-off newspaper which summarises everything that happened in 2023, as well as looking forward to 2024. It's full of exclusive analysis and explainers from the TLDR team, as well as a whole bunch of our favourite creators. We also put a ton of effort into the design, putting together a load of high-quality graphics and designs. As I say, if you want a copy, you can head over to our website and secure 30% off the normal price by using the code TLDRDAILY.